Good afternoon and welcome to another session of the Veterans Forum. I'm Bob Stevens and I'm lucky to be doing this as a host. We have made the opportunity to many of the people in and around the Berkshire County and any place else, veterans, male or female, if they have a story that they would like to tell about their service experiences, we'd be more than glad to accommodate them. As a matter of fact, we'd like to have them, particularly the gals. Today we're lucky. We have another fellow who's been around a couple of years, and he's going to share some of his experiences with us. Name is Rocco Fumento. Rocco, for the record, would you give your name, spell your last name, and your dates of service, please?
First name is Rocco. Fumento is F as in Frank, U, M as in Mary, E, N as in Nancy, T, O as in Oliver. I'm so used to spelling it that way.
Okay. And it comes out the right every time, huh?
Comes out right.
What were your dates of service and your branch?
April of 44 to July of 46. Well, I started off in the Army. Well, I started off in the infantry, then went to the cavalry. From there, I went to the artillery, and then to Italy in the replacement depot. I was attached to the 5th Army, the Red Bull Division, 34th Division. I arrived in that outfit late, so the whole outfit went back to the United States, and I was transferred with some others into the 88th Division.
Wow.
And in the replacement depot until, well, there was a Battle of the Bulge then, too, and they were taking people from our outfit, and I missed that, however. But then they began to push north. Mm-hmm. The Allies had been stuck there around Florence area for over a year, I think, something like that. And then we started heading north when they began the big push. But the further north I got, the further north the Germans got.
You scared them.
So I never got to meet them.
Well, you were lucky, I guess. Now, for the record, so we can kind of build a history or chronology, could you tell us where you were born, when, and how your life was, if you will, before service time?
Yeah, I was born in North Adams, Massachusetts, right close by here. And I'd always wanted to go to college, but Depression era, we didn't have much money. So right after high school, I worked in the shoe factory in North Adams called Gales. And I worked there until the war began, and then I was drafted. And they rejected me because of what they said was a polynoidal cyst at the base of my spine, which I didn't even know I had. I had no difficulties there.
Wow.
So I took it, and I became more and more depressed as I was home. I became an air raid warden, and I felt
somebody had to do it.
Useless, you know. And so I said, I'm going to see if I can, go to the doctor and have them remove this and see what happens. And so I went to the doctor, he removed it, and then I went back to the draft board. I said, I had this operation. Could I get in now? I said, you want to get in? Yes. That's how I got in finally.
Where did you enter the service, if you will? Were you inducted and all that?
I was inducted at Camp Devens, at Fort Devens. And then from there I went to Camp Blanding, Florida, and that's when I was in the infantry. We were only there for 6 weeks, and we were told we were shipping out to another camp.
Oh, okay.
Another camp, not shipping out the country. But they didn't really tell us anything about it, where we were going or anything. And we got to Fort Riley, and they said, you're in the cavalry. I didn't mind that because I'd been horseback riding before, and so I rather liked that. But there were some guys from New York. The thought of riding a horse scared the hell out of them, and they wouldn't ride. They refused to ride. So they put them in the mechanized cavalry.
Oh.
And we had an awful sergeant there, and the first day we went out on a horse, we see these people coming down on this cliff, sharp cliff, and I turned to a friend of mine and I said, well, that's probably what we do when we graduate the last day. We were doing that 15 minutes later.
Oh.
And the sergeant who warned us about that difficulties he'd have or whatnot. He fell off his horse and broke his leg. I'm afraid to say we cheered. So anyway, what we're supposed to do really is lead horses up the Alps in Italy. That's what
pack mules.
we're on a horse and we're leading the horse. Well, then they disbanded that, and I ended up in Camp Housey in outside of Dallas, near Dallas and Fort Worth, that area. From there, then I was shipped overseas, and I didn't land in Sicily. I landed in Naples, and then went to a replacement depot right outside of Naples in a town named Caserta, where the king and queen had one of their major palaces.
Ooh.
And so we stayed on the grounds there for a while, then moved further north, and the Germans were, and the Americans were stuck at that line around Florence until the spring of 45. Meanwhile, there was a Battle of the Bulge shortly after I got into Italy, and some of the guys in my outfit were shipped there.
You missed that one.
I missed that. I don't know how I missed it. Maybe because I am of Italian descent. They wanted to keep me in Italy. I don't know. But I was happy to miss it. And I do have if I can interject a little personal story here.
It's your mic.
This friend of mine was called up, and he said, Rocky, they called me Rocky, I have a bad premonition about this. He was called up to go to the Battle of the Bulge. He said, I don't think I'm going to make it. And I really thought he wasn't going to make it. He was from Worcester, Massachusetts. Then after the Army, I was going to school, and I had a summer off, went to see my sister in Worcester, and took this girl to a dance. And at the dance, I heard somebody from across the room saying, hey, Rocky. And there was my deceased friend. I was sure he was dead.
Come back to haunt you.
Yeah, I was so happy to see him anyway.
Good.
But as I say, they packed us like cattle and cattle cars, and we went up north, and the further north we got. Well, by the time we got to Milan, they had already hanged Mussolini and his girlfriend. We saw at the gas station where they were hanged, there. And then I became the Army of Occupation, and then we went to Italy and Yugoslavia were fighting over this piece of territory around Trieste and Grizia, the Adriatic side there. And we went there to sort of hold a peace between them. We were in this town called Grizia, which was maybe 10, 12 miles from Trieste. And I was there until I was let out of the Army.
Wow. Now, I'm going to kind of walk backwards a little bit to something I'd like to try and do. While you were in the cavalry, the first of your services, there were any real, other than the sergeant getting zonked, any other things that made it interesting or were funny or come back some real good memories of those days?
Yeah, we had a big storm one time, flooding, and with all our personal goods around, and here's the captain coming around on this horse, and he says, save the horses, save the horses. He didn't care about us. We had to save the horses. Well, we did save the horses. Another thing is, I was determined never to fall from a horse. I often ended up in the belly, under the belly of the horse, but I didn't fall
180,
off.
huh?
Yeah. We also had a sadistic second lieutenant. When the lieutenant wasn't around, he'd have us go in this like a corral, riding without our stirrups, trotting.
Ooh.
If you've tried that.
Particularly with what you had been divested of.
Exactly. So one day the lieutenant came and saw what he was doing, and he gave him hell for doing that. Oh, and another experience was tornado. Canada's, of course, tornado country, And we were all from the east, and we never seen the tornado. We saw it coming from a distance, and they're telling us to get under the barracks, and we wanted to watch, Finally, we did get under the barracks, but unfortunately, the tornado switched directions and didn't come towards us.
Well, you were praying it would take the second Louis, huh?
Exactly. There are a lot of little incidents. like one day, somebody captured, I guess, a copperhead snake. I don't know one snake from another either, but they're poisonous anyway. The kind.
Ungood.
Yeah, and he slid it open, and baby snakes kept coming out, you know, and then they set fire to the whole thing. Well, a friend and I were doing guard duty at night, and we were sleeping in pup tents, you know, and we were off, and then we were both in the pup tent lying down. And I felt something like slither under my pillow. And I said, would you remove your arm from under my pillow? He said, my arm isn't under your pillow. Oh. This was the day after the snake incident. Yeah. So we assumed there was a snake there in the pup tent with us, and we jumped out of there.
Did you ever confirm that it was, or
no, we never
disappeared?
Did. Yeah.
Thank
goodness.
And
I had this friend, too, who hated horses, and the horses hated him. And the horse bit him one day, and so he turns around and bit that horse on the ass himself. They finally let him out on the service. He couldn't get along with the horses, and I don't know, he found something wrong with him, back or something, so they let him out.
COG then, huh? Yeah.
But most of all, I enjoyed myself there. We had a lot of laughs, and when you're with a group, you don't worry too much about what's going to happen tomorrow or about whether you're going to get killed or not. And I discovered that really in Italy. I slept well there.
Well, your native land, once removed.
No, but the thing is, it didn't bother me, the thought of going. I didn't dwell on it. I think we were too busy, maybe, to really dwell on it, on going up to the front. And so things went quietly there. Oh, Mickey Rooney was in my outfit, by the way, there.
Mighty Mouse?
Yeah, he was on sick call often. He got out pretty soon. Oh, yeah. And he ended up in the service department before then, entertaining, you know, that sort of thing. So that takes me up to Italy and Caserta, and living in tents there. And you know, we got there early in December, I think it was, and that's the rainy season. They talk about sunny Italy. Well, for about 3 months we didn't see the sun, and we sloshed around in mud a lot. One thing that bothered me really there was, you know, they didn't have integration at the time, and they take us to this, I don't know, like a big open tent with spigots coming down, and they take us to a shower once a week, something like that. And then we had to go in first, and the black guys had to go in afterwards, and that bothered me.
Amen.
Yeah,
amen.
It really bothered me. That wasn't
good. I'm going to interrupt a second, a flashback. I've been having, as you were talking about your days in the cavalry, did you ever write home and tell your folks where you were and what was their reaction? Oh, that should be a corker.
Well, they were happy that I had ridden a horse before, because in that aspect they weren't worried about. But they were amazed that there was a cavalry. I mean, everybody I wrote to, well, after the war, I said I was in the cavalry. What war was that?
Yeah, how was Custer?
World War I? Because I don't think I even knew that the cavalry existed until I got in it.
Okay. Yeah. Now, this is a sneaky way of segueing, but would you hold up your breeches, please?
Yeah, I brought this along to show what we wore in the cavalry. And my waistline, I think, was about 29, 30 inches at the time.
That's indecent.
I can get my thigh in it now. That's about as far as it'll go.
Now, is that what you call jodhpurs, or were these just GI riding breeches?
Yeah, they call them GI. Yeah, but jodhpurs is a fancy word. That we didn't use those fancy words.
I know, we just threw a saddle and rode it.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, I had to get those. That's great. Okay, now that you left the cavalry, any experiences? Was there any marked change in the kind of instruction and treatment you got when you left the cavalry and went into the next branch?
In artillery. At Camp Housie, it was difficult making the adjustment first. We had to go through all those basic training and things like that, and the what do you call it? The
Obstacle course?
Obstacle course,
Yeah.
yes, obstacle course. I could not climb over that with a rope.
Mm-hmm.
I just could not. So I looked around to see if anybody was looking. I went around it, and the sergeant saw me. He said, "I saw you, Rocco." He called me Rocco. The basic training was kind of rough, but we handled it well. I think all of us.
Were the instructors like the classic early World War II GIs, you know, mean, hard?
Yeah, we had some.
rough?
We had one sergeant from the South, as a matter of fact, and because I tended to be kind of independent-minded, and you're not supposed to be that.
No, that's bad.
In the Army, yeah. So I used to sort of talk back at him now and then. And he said, "You must come from a rich family." I said, "What do you mean?" He said, "Your attitude."
Oh.
My family is poverty-stricken. I just had this unheard, like, I didn't enjoy following a herd.
Okay, all right.
And especially when this guy was leading it, because of his attitude, that he was better than all of us. He knew more than all of us. And
Well, technically he may have, but he didn't know about people.
Exactly.
Yeah. Right.
Something kind of funny, which really had nothing to do with the Army when I was there, was we went to a USO dance, and this lovely blonde girl was sitting down, and I said, "Would you like to dance?" And she looked up at me and said, "Well, I guess so." And when she stood up, I realized why she hesitated. She was about 6 feet tall, and I'm short. I was dancing with my face between her breasts, which was not bad at all. It was rather enjoyable.
Good comfort station.
But I did feel kind of silly
Yeah.
dancing on the floor with this 6 foot tall woman. I don't know, the time seemed to go by very rapidly there. And before we knew it, we were in, I guess it was Fort Patrick Henry, I think, from where we left from, the States. And they didn't tell us right away that we were going to Italy. They handed out mosquito netting and suntans.
Oh, you're bound for Alaska.
So we thought we were going to South Pacific.
Yeah.
And they let us know until about 5 days out at sea they were going to Italy. And everybody was happy to be going to Italy rather than Iwo Jima or any place else in the South Pacific. And when we entered the Bay of Naples, it looked so beautiful, you know, as we saw them in pictures. But then the closer we got to shore, we could see the shelled-out buildings. What a contrast! You know, it was just horrible to see that destruction as we landed in Naples. And the kids there it was really very pitiful. Pitiful. They were supposedly soliciting for their sisters. You know.
Yeah.
One kid came up to me and said, "I can't meet my sister, almost a virgin."
Yeah, almost.
Almost a virgin. Yeah. He's kind of funny, but it was appalling at the same time. Oh, we're in near Caserta. I did visit my godfather's sister there, one of the little towns. Yeah. And the Germans had been there. It was a poor town. She lived on the second floor, and her chickens were on the first floor. You know, you hear about that. And that poor woman, she had nothing to give. I gave her some money on that, so she felt like she had to give us something when we left. I went with a friend of mine. So she gave us 6 eggs, and I didn't want to take them from her, but I felt that would be insulting her if I didn't take them from her. So I did.
It was kind of a bittersweet meeting.
It was. I mean, she was so happy to see us, and she obviously wanted to give us something, and it was very little for her to give us. But that was a great deal for her to give us, actually. So we accepted it graciously.
Well, did you have any time, maybe R&R is not the right term, but while you were there, to do any visiting around some of the more popular stories, places that you've seen and may have wanted to go back to now?
Oh, yeah. Well, we get to go to see Monte Cassino, but this was afterward, after
Okay.
that awful battle there. But we were near Naples, so we were able to go to Naples, you know, for the day or a night. things
24,
like that.
48-hour pass.
Yeah. And I remember going to an opera there, Rigoletto. I was with this friend of mine. He said, I don't want to go to an opera. He's all that screeching. I said, I'll meet you after the opera, you know. He said, no, I don't be alone. I'll come with you. Well, it was Rigoletto, which is a very colorful opera. He sat there entranced. He said, I never knew it was this enjoyable.
Yeah.
I made a convert that day.
This Kuth is good stuff.
Yeah.
Great.
After the war, I did manage to visit my uncle in southern Italy, who was a monk at the time in Lecce. And then I had to travel by civilian buses and trains and whatnot. And it was a little scary because I was the only American there in GI clothing, and these guys had just lost the war, and you wonder how they're going to act towards you. And the trains were packed. But they were respectful towards
It was
me.
over and done with.
It was over and
Let
done
it die, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. What were your duties in this, all of this going on?
I was ammo man on the field artillery with a Howitz 50 caliber howitzer, I think it was.
Howitzers?
Yeah. And then after the war was over, the captain discovered that I knew how to type.
Show off.
So he said, oh, well, he said, that makes you eligible to become staff sergeant in the supply department. So that's how I became staff sergeant, really, in the supply department. And I knew nothing about supplies.
So well qualified then.
Yeah, right. And at that time we were in Gorizia, and something horrible happened shortly after I became supply sergeant there. I used to have to, when the guys were going back to the States, I used to have to take inventory of their stuff and things like that and get them ready to leave. And this guy came down that morning, and I checked him out and everything. And upstairs, and some foolish person, they were supposed to be cleaning the barracks, decided to use gasoline.
Oh.
And somebody lit a cigarette.
Woof.
And that guy, it went up in flames.
Oh, they doused him?
Somehow, some of them must have got on him. And he was killed. And he was supposed to go home, leave that day. I mean, that was one really bad experience I had there, to see that, to hear the explosion first and downstairs, and looking up and see the flames, and his running through the hallway that way, on fire. When they put it out, he was dead.
That's not good.
We were in Gorizia then for, well, as I say, until the war was over with. And before we left, they gave us 2 weeks vacation in Cortina d'Ampezzo, which is northern Italy in the Alps. That was very pleasant. Didn't expect that.
Rough.
Yeah. 2 weeks there, and then we went back to Gorizia, and then about a week later, shipped back to the States. Left there from Livorno, in Italy. Got back to, what did we get back into? Must have been Fort Dix, yeah. Fort Dix.
And then discharged?
Discharged, visited cousins in Morristown, and came home.
Okay. Now, did you take advantage of the GI Bill or anything like
Oh,
that
yeah,
to get your schooling?
yes, I certainly did.
What happened after that in the progression?
Yeah, as I said, I always wanted to go to college, so now I was able to afford to go to college. And at that time, the colleges were pretty crowded with homecoming GIs. So the University of Mass opened up a branch in Fort Devens, 2-year branch. And oddly enough, that's where I was inducted. And there I was as a student there for 2 years. But after 2 years, you had to either go to the University of Mass or somewhere else. And a friend and I applied to Columbia in New York. We got accepted there.
Good.
And went to school there, then got my degree in creative writing and English. I went to the creative writing school in the University of Iowa, got my degree there in creative writing in English.
A master's or another BA?
Master's, yeah.
Good.
And then I went to work in New York for a while. I loved New York as a student there, but I didn't like working there because I didn't have a very good job to begin with. And riding the subways, I didn't care for that. Jostling so many people around you. So I got this job in Columbus, Ohio, as a engineering editor for this magazine, engineering magazine, where you had a list like parts of a truck. The smallest parts, a very dull job, you know. And none of us really knew what we were doing, but I was hired as a technical writer trainee, and within 2 weeks I was an editor. Not because I knew much, but because I knew a little bit more than everybody else. But I still didn't know anything.
Okay,
and
you were well unqualified.
Yeah, I had a woman boss at the time, and I was offered, this head of the English department called New York, where I had been living, and got my friend and told me I was in Columbus, Ohio. So he called me there, and he said, would you like to come here as a grad assistant, teaching full-time?
Where was here? What
University of Illinois.
Oh, okay,
yeah,
thank you.
University of Illinois. I'd gone to work in Columbus, Ohio. So I said, you mean next spring? This was September already. He said, no, today's Thursday, I mean Monday. So, teaching had been at the bottom of my list because I always felt I was too shy to be a teacher. But then I said to myself, if I don't try it, I may regret it. Mm-hmm. And I don't have much time to worry about it, just a weekend, you know. So I gave my notice that night. I had a woman boss, a very charming woman, and very unusual to have a woman boss at that time. And she said, oh, by all means, go there. She said, this is a dead-end job.
Good.
So I went. I was handed a textbook. Somebody helped me find a room. Most of the grammar I'd learned, I'd forgotten. I mean, I knew how to apply it, but I didn't know the names of different things. So I spent that weekend with the textbook in my new room. And the following Monday, 8 o'clock, I was teaching my first class.
Oh, what took you so long? Good Lord.
And that's where I met my wife.
Ah, so.
And we got married 4 or 5 years later. But it was all very platonic to begin with, you know, naturally.
Has to be.
Yeah. So then I was there, and I began teaching creative writing courses. I've had 4 novels published, some short stories published, textbooks, a couple of books on film. I interviewed Fellini and went back to Italy. I've gone back to Italy very often since then. And the director, Federico Fellini, I interviewed him while I was there. And I enjoy teaching film a great deal. I intended to teach as long as I could. In fact, I did teach till I was 69, but that last year I taught, I just began to feel tired. And I said, this isn't fair to the students, it isn't fair to me. Yeah. I think it's time, so I leave. They tried to convince me to stay there at least to teach one course. I said no. And I came back to New England. You know, I don't know if you've been to Illinois. Have you been there? It's just flat territory.
Flat, oh yeah.
Yes. And I'm used to the mountains. And I always had this feeling of claustrophobia. What's holding up the sky? There's no mountains. The sky is falling down.
Look out for the chicken. She's going to get
exactly. you. So anyway, we ended up back in the Berkshires in Dalton.
Now, while you were there, though, were there any, again, the thing I'm trying to develop, if we can, is some of the interesting things that you did, places that you've seen, contacts you may have made that are now helping you.
In Italy or
no, in
the States?
Flatland, in the Illinois.
Well,
throughout your teaching career.
I think the most thing, and I think maybe I got a lot of this from the Army too, was learning to work with different people, different backgrounds. True, we had no blacks in our outfit, but we did have a lot of Hispanics there, and I got to know them, pretty well. In fact, I had a good friend there who was Hispanic, and we'd gone on this 25-mile hike, and I came back with blood blisters on my feet. And I said, I'm going to the medics in the morning. I said, why don't you come with me? He said, my feet are fine. I said, keep me company. Oh, he came. They looked at his feet, too, looked at mine. Your feet are fine. He had flat feet, didn't know it.
Oh.
He was given a desk job. The guy whose feet were not sore. I thought that was an injustice.
Yeah.
Anyway, back to the States again. It was a sense of living with all these people with different backgrounds that I really got interested in people as individuals, and I found myself, and I guess this helped my writing a bit too, ask them a lot of questions like you're asking me now.
What?
About their background,
Yeah.
etc. And then in college, I felt really a rapport with the students, especially students who would say, I really would like to be in liberal arts, but my father wants me to be a doctor or a lawyer, and he's paying for my education. Yeah. And I felt bad for guys like that. And some were strong enough to say, well, they're going out on their own and earning their own living. Yeah. And they did that. But fortunately, I had nobody push me into a direction I did not want to go into.
I imagine you'd have rebelled even so if they did try to push too hard.
I guess so.
Yeah, okay.
So I think that's what I got really mainly from the Army. It was a sense of community, that we're all in this together.
Yeah.
And I think that's what bothers me about so much of our partisan politics nowadays, where you, well, I guess I'm not allowed to speak politically.
Say anything you want, but it'll be cut out later on. My name is Bush. How about your family? I'm getting nosy, but not pushy. But you and your bride have any children?
Oh yeah,
so
yes,
what are they doing?
Yes. Well, my wife wanted a girl from the beginning. We tried 4 times. We got 4 boys, and she said, "I think we better give up." So we gave up. Well, and now my sons are dispersed. One is, well, his main office is in Vermont, but he can work wherever he wants to, because of the internet nowadays. You know?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So he lives in Philadelphia, but he's up in Vermont for a few days at the office, main office.
What's the trade or profession?
He is, oh God, you know, he's given me a book on what he does, and I still don't understand what he does. But he goes to Africa, he goes to different places. It's a non-profit organization, but it's not a charitable sort of thing. They do things, they hire people, and they try to teach people how to, human resources, that's exactly what he does. It's
to get the best out of each person.
Yeah, that's the sort of thing.
Hey, I'm going to write that down.
And then I have a son in Hollywood who works on DVDs, which is why my DVD collection is fantastic. I told him if I live to be 2,000 years old, I will not be able to see all these DVDs you send me. Stop it, you know? Because he knows I like movies anyway, he does. And then another son is in, right also outside of Washington. I have 4 sons who are very, very different from each other. In fact, we went on a ecumenical tour to Israel some years ago with Bob Kite from Congregational Church. Yeah. Yes. He
He's my old buddy.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
I like him a lot. Yeah. He and the rabbi from Pittsfield got this ecumenical group together. And so we had a meeting with the people around who find out something about us. And when it came to me, I said, I think I perhaps have the most ecumenical family here. I said, I'm Catholic. My wife is Jewish. My oldest son is Orthodox Jewish. My wife is not Orthodox Jewish. My next oldest son is more Catholic than the Pope. My next son is a Lutheran, and the youngest son is still searching.
Yeah.
And politically, they're that way too.
Okay. So in effect, you had no control or monitoring
Well,
of
I
what
think
they did?
I gave them a lot of freedom to think.
Good.
Like I do with my students, you see. Yeah. I said, well, you can make up your own mind about things. I showed them my library. I encouraged them to read. And one of them especially would come to me and say, Dad, I finished this book. Would you recommend something else? You know? But I try to get them to think for themselves and not to try to push them in any one direction, because
that's fair.
That's what I learned not to do in teaching. So they're all dispersed throughout the country now.
Now, are you in any way a volunteer teacher on some of these life programs they have around
Well, did
here?
you know Bill organization? The Berkshire?
Bill,
yeah. We joined it when they first started, and I did teach a film course there. In fact, that's how I met Maureen Stapleton, the actress.
Oh, yeah.
So I got to be very friendly with her. She came to our class, and she spoke there. And very, very warm person with a lot of phobias, which hurt her acting career. She wouldn't travel after a while.
We knew of her in Lenox anyway.
Yeah, right. And a very wonderful person, but something went wrong that she became afraid of everything. Mm. And that ruined her acting career, of course. She wouldn't go anywhere. I remember Meryl Streep was making a movie in Lenox.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
Yes, and she said, let's stop seeing Meryl one day. I took her out for lunch. I said, okay. I never met Meryl. Meryl.
Everybody.
Why not? Street comes out of the, I guess they were filming in the courtroom there in Lenox. And she came out and embraced her, and she says, how would you like to be my aunt in my next movie?
Oh.
And Maureen said, where's it going to be filmed? She said, in Florida. She said, no, I won't go.
Won't go.
I won't go.
So much for that.
Yeah.
And I'm interrupting. I'm sorry. I'm trying to.
No.
Could you want to run through your slightly small-sized blouse, if you would, and some of your insignia, so we can get an idea of who and what you were?
This is the outfit I was in first. It was called the Red Bull Division. And the picture, of course, the Red Bull, the 34th Division. And was my rank. I don't even remember what this stands for. Do you have an idea? Yeah. I forgot completely.
That's the ruptured duck. Every guy and gal got one when you were discharged.
Is that what happens?
Yeah.
Okay.
The Navy got one with a white background and a yellow background.
I don't even remember what it was.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, these are my hash marks. I was in Italy for a year and a half.
Yeah.
And my rank, Staff Sergeant. And this was the 88th Division. They called this the Blue Devils.
Uh-huh. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, good.
That's the division I ended up with. And I would never fit in that nowadays.
I shouldn't be in your program, but when I finally got left the Navy, I had a brand new set of dress blues, and they were sharp. And my mother cut them up and made a suit for my youngest sister to attend my wedding to my bride. And I said, why did you do that? She says, well, I think the little people at night were pulling the threads to make it a lot smaller because you couldn't get in that if your life depended upon it. Well, in kind of a wrap-up, if you will, what would you suggest that people think about as the world keeps turning the way it is politically? Are we in good straits or are we in trouble?
No, I think we're, I won't use that word, deep S.
Oh, snow.
Right now?
In Berkshires, it's got to be snow.
Deep snow, exactly. Yeah. I was against our involvement in the war from the beginning. And I felt if I had sense enough to think this over and think this was not going to work, what the hell were our Congress people thinking and voting for that war?
Mm-hmm. Well, there's been a lot of controversy.
Yes, there has been. But, you know, I thought of all these things that come up later. Who were the ones who attacked us? It wasn't Iraq. It wasn't Saddam Hussein. It was Al-Qaeda, who were stationed really in Afghanistan. That part of the war, it seems to me, was okay there. But to go into Iraq, that's where our troubles began. And right now, how do we get out of there? I don't know. My wife and I are split now. I am for Barack Obama, and she is for Hillary, of course.
No, of course.
Yeah, I discovered that most of the women, I go to the CRA in Dalton, usually 5 days a week, and talk to the guys there and the women there, and the women are usually for Hillary, and the men are usually for Barack. I mean, we're
clearly divided.
Even the men and women can't get together.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's shall we say, challenging.
Yeah, I
And,
guess it is.
A lot of the fellows, the older guys, if you will, over 21, have mixed emotions. A lot of them that I've talked to, good or bad, say, you know, I don't know how or why, but maybe we could pull out of it somehow. But like yourself and most of them, there's no way of pulling out. You leave a hole there, that hole's going to be filled with trouble.
I mean, there's civil war there now. I tend to agree with Congressman Biden now, who thinks the country ought to be divided into 3 sections: the Shias, the Sunnis, and the Kurds. These are, well, especially the 2 Muslim groups that are fighting against each other.
It's as the kids would say, it's ungood.
Yeah.
And hopefully, maybe Yahweh or whoever will get
Well,
us
it
out of
upsets me, too, that the people who got us into this war had never been in a war themselves. And that Cheney got 5 deferments to get out of going to war. He had more, what was the word he used? I had more important things to do or something like that.
Yeah, PYA.
Yeah. And that bothers the hell out of me, especially, I think, as a veteran. And that's why I really, in a sense, I'm in favor of universal draft. This way, everybody gets in it.
Everybody gets their turn at bat.
Right, exactly. Romney has 5 sons. None of them have been in the service. And many of these people go into service now, they want a higher education. This is the only way they can get it, by being in the service. And so they become cannon fodder for the rest of us. How are we asked to sacrifice? He cuts taxes. First time I've ever heard in wartime where taxes are cut rather than raised. You know?
And then spend
it bothers
billions.
me.
Yeah, well, I'm going to cut it off here, so we both don't land in jail or something like that, okay? But
I know I became very political, and I have some Republican friends.
Well, there were 2 in Berkshire County, I heard. Pete Giftos and some other guy that I haven't met yet.
Well, Judge Rudy Sacco, who we have a meeting with all the time, he is quite a Republican.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, we're going to wrap this up, folks. It's a bit this shy of the required amount of time to spend, but again, we hope that what you've heard, what you've seen, particularly you who have been on the cusp, if you will, we'd like to share your stories with the people out here. We're willing to do whatever it takes, and we hope that you will help us to help the rest of the world. Come and see us. You know where to get us. Again, the name is Bob Stevens, and I thank you for listening. I hope it's worth your while. And if you've got some comments, don't be bashful. This is a 2-way street. Thank you for your time. See you later.